Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a real special guest today. It's my mate John Gonzalez from Corpus Christi, Texas. He was born here, fished here, went and served in Vietnam as a Coast Guard. Got a great story to tell which I want to share with you. And he's going to tell us about how fishing has developed here in Corpus Christi. So let's go. This is John. How you doing?
How you doing, sir? How you doing, mate?
All right. So tell me now, you were born here in Corpus Christi in school?
I was born and raised here in Corpus, and there in the 60s, I left to California to do the very big experiment.
Did you get called up or you just volunteered?
No, I got drafted.
You did?
Yes, sir.
What did you feel like the day that number come up?
It was scary. Enough to, a lot of my friends were from school were passing away at that time. They died.
Killed in Vietnam?
Getting killed in Vietnam.
So it was just a scary thing to be involved in.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So you went there. How long were you out there for?
I was there for about 8 months.
But you were with the Coast Guards?
Yes.
And you were doing
small boat
patrols up and down the rivers? So okay, so you were rescuing people?
Yes.
That's good.
Did all that time with the Coast Guard.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, when you come back, you were still in the Coast Guard here, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
What's the scariest thing that happened to you in Vietnam?
Scariest thing was really patrolling, really looking for the enemy.
Going up in rivers and things?
Yes, sir.
Would they just start shooting at you?
Yeah, at night they would start hitting the hull with the bullets.
Was the hull bulletproof?
No, it was just a steel boat. It wasn't.
So
there was no such thing as bulletproof back then.
So they would shoot through the hull of the boat?
Yes.
Now, how fast would you go up that river at?
About 28 miles an hour.
So how were you doing the navigation? I mean, were you just standing there looking and staring up the middle, or?
After a while, you knew the route, what to take, and
Okay, but it was pretty damn scary.
Yeah, it was.
Well, thank you
for being from Corpus Christi.
All right, thank you for your service, mate.
Well, thank you.
All right, now tell me, did you fish before you went there?
Yes.
As a kid?
Yes.
Where did you fish?
I fished with my uncles in the bay, and at that time, redfish and drum were typically a no-no to eat here in Corpus, at least.
You call them like carp, they used to call them.
Yeah, they were just really for the poor people fish, you would say.
Right, but croaker, you would eat them, wouldn't you? I mean, there used to be a big croaker run back then, didn't there?
Yes, it would be croaker, but what they use is, they would call them beer fish at that time, because they would just cut the guts out and they would fry them completely, where you could almost eat the whole fish completely, spines and everything.
Good eating?
Yeah, for when you're drinking beer.
So, how would you fish for them? Would just
with hooks and,
Okay, were you using graphite rods?
Oh, no, that wasn't. Back then, it was just fiberglass rods. There was even a gentleman out of Kingsville that he made custom rods, but they were out of leather, that he would make them for
They were called bullwhip rods.
Yeah, bullwhip rods.
I've actually seen some of them.
Yes.
Yeah, real nice. And
they would.
I think they were out of a tank aerial that was leather bound.
Well, they were.
I think that's what the story was.
He was pretty famous for making.
I know the gentleman I saw was a famous fisherman, Tommy Sagiri. I was fishing with him near Hugh Sargent, and he had some. And he said he was going to get me one. I never did get it, but I wish I did. Tommy Sagiri was a good mate of mine.
Yes.
I haven't seen him in many years, though.
And back then, most people just trout line for trout. I mean...
what about Calcutta rods? Did you ever use them?
No. There wasn't... That didn't come about.
I mean, the big bamboo rods.
The big bamboo, yes. During the old days...
Well, that's what they call Calcutta.
Well, back in the old days, there was a Calcutta rod. And there still is, I think. But back then, a lot of people would use the large bamboos for fishing for sheephead here in Oso Bay. And they would use the crabs, not the sand, what little sand crabs.
Right, little blue crabs and things.
Yeah, they would use little blue crabs or sand crabs. They would use those for bait because that's what they mostly fed on. So a lot of the people could not reach. You got to imagine the equipment that was available, especially in Corpus Christi, wasn't state of the art.
Right.
I mean, people back then fished whatever they could. You know, there was no such thing as people using lures. I mean, until bingo came along.
Do you remember bingo lures?
Yes.
Yeah, because I've got a couple of them.
Yes.
In fact, you gave me some.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They were original. There was a Swedish man, I can't remember his whole name. He would fish the Baffin Bay. And back then they would use there was a site out there that was made for Reverend Roloff's Wayward Home for Boys.
Right.
And he would put them out on piers that he built, and they would fish all day long for trout, which they would sell.
Now back then they would use a laurel leaf as well, wouldn't they? They would use a leaf as a lure. They would put it on the long lines as well. So I understood.
A lot of people would even use shotgun shells for bait. They would use the red color for
just to attract them.
For the redfish because.
Did you ever know Poncho, the lure maker?
Yes, he was
He was a lovely old boy.
Very interested fellow.
I really enjoyed talking
I loved
to him.
he would make lures at the time that I would.
I'll tell you a funny story about Poncho. So he was fishing in the high banks, right? And Billy had caught some trout using a particular mirror lure. And he pulled up on Poncho, and Poncho always made his own lures, right? So Billy goes, I've been catching trout on this lure. You need to try it, Poncho. Poncho looked at him and said, if them trout won't take my lures, fuck them. He would only use his lures.
Yeah, he made lures there at his house.
Interesting man. He once told me he did beekeeping as well.
Yeah, really?
And I did an interview with him, and he told me he learned more about the human race by studying bees than what he did being around people.
Right.
Great character, great character.
Great personality.
Right, let me get back into you.
Go ahead.
Right, so you come back from Vietnam. Where did you fish the surf? When did that sort of come into play?
Well, to be quite honest, the time was during the 60s, and surfing was state of the art. It was becoming just, getting down here in Corpus Christi and everything like this. And back then, to make extra money, because you were just regulars on the beach, we would actually fish for coyotes.
Right.
Instead of going to the water, we would go to the dunes.
They used to do it then, didn't they?
Yeah, and they would.
What would you do with them?
If you kept the tail in the ear, you turn them back into the Parks and Wildlife.
How much would you
And
get?
they had a bounty, and I think the bounty was $10, $12, which was a lot of money back then.
Oh yeah. Now I know, like people used to get what are them rats, nutrias.
Well,
there was big game on that up nearer to Louisiana.
yes, now nutria rats they're still up there, and they get huge. A lot of people they use the nutria liver for catfishing. Catfishing, very popular.
I knew a guy who actually said to me he brought his first Cadillac by selling nutria skins.
Yeah.
To the feds.
Oh, they don't throw away nothing.
Now, did you fish the piers or did you the beaches?
We used to fish the piers. There were several piers out here at that time. There at Padre Island and down on the bay, and of course the big bay going to Rockport, right there. And drum fishing, there used to be an annual drum run.
Right.
It used to happen around January when it got real cold.
Mm-hmm.
So people from the aluminum plant, they would all be there at that pier, Indian Point Pier,
right,
to fish for drum. And everybody ate the big drum. The worms disappeared from the body once they cooked it. So they would call it, but everybody. That's what.
So
did.
did you, like Indian Point? Did you fish Nueces and round near the Nueces entrance?
I didn't fish Nueces River or anything like that because I was so used to salt water. It was so close, and until I lived up there in Houston, did I start fishing freshwater up there, which was.
Well, Nueces comes in over the back of the bay there, and John Barley, who used to live out there and fish that area as a kid, he told me that when they dammed it, the Nueces, they put some dams in, that it killed off the oyster, and that killed off the tarpon fishery. He said the tarpon always used to go to the Nueces. And that stopped.
Well, even at that time, the boats that would come, the large boats that would come in, the pollution laws were non-existent.
Right.
There would be a lot of oil coming into the water, so that part of Nueces you stayed away from.
Okay.
You could even taste it in the fish, the oil,
right.
And a lot of the ships that would come in.
How far would a tarpon go on a gallon of oil?
Well, the tarpon were pretty generous back there in the 60s in Port Aransas.
They were thick,
They
weren't they?
said they were thick.
Now,
but nobody ate them.
They used them as fertilizer.
That and oysters.
What an absolute awesome fishery that just disappeared.
Yes.
Also the swordfish, wasn't it? There was a lot of them being caught.
There was a lot of swordfish, and of course, this place was known for marlin back in the 50s, 60s. I think one of the presidents came there.
He fished for tarpon, though, didn't he? Yeah.
Well, that was
Roosevelt. Was
fight.
It Roosevelt? I think it was.
So.
And he was in a Farley boat.
Yes.
I can remember. I read about the Farleys.
Yes.
And I think he was.
They would fish with marlin, and their gear was rods were made out of wood that already had the bend in them.
Right.
It didn't. You gotta understand that back then, especially in Corpus, we were very backwards.
Right.
In the new things coming out.
Okay. Do you think that if you look at how the fishery has changed, like we've lost a lot of species and the quantity and quality of the fish has dropped off, do you think that's what's advanced our fishing equipment? For example, you need to have better gear to get these fish.
Well, I think with bass fishing and lure casting and everything like that started filtering over to the salt water.
Right.
That was my take on it. You got faster reels, smaller reels, and things like that. And it all came from freshwater fishing, because when the Garcia 500 came out, that was the biggest thing. If you had reel 209, you were hitting it big.
Right.
And you got to imagine people were casting with 209s.
Right.
And these Garcias that were straight metal.
You need an educated thumb. That's what they said.
Yeah.
Now, looking at the fishery, do you think it's on the decline? Have we got any problems that you think we should be aware of?
I think we are on a decline. A lot of people that are, I hate to say this about some of our industries because they're beneficial to us, is that they destroy a lot of where the nursing grounds of fish, a lot of bycatch.
Right.
And that gets killed. If you were to visit, let's say, the Corpus Christi Tea Heads and see what they bring in, you'll see nothing but all different types of flounder.
The bycatches.
The bycatches. There's even, you can't even catch a whelk. You see whelks everywhere around now. It's a penalty if you catch a big whelk. If you get a hold of a big whelk.
Right.
It's in violation of laws. Now the trout, it was unlimited source. And now that's on the decline in certain areas. Fish that would
but then we are getting an upturn in, like we're seeing pompano turn. like never before. Last year was amazing.
Yes, and pretty soon that's going to be in
Right.
check.
Right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's going to be in check because the only thing that's basically feeding us from the Gulf are the fishermen and people coming from San Antonio is whiting and pompano.
There was a hell of a fishery. But the shark fishery is getting big here now. I mean, that's colossal. I've never
It's always been here, the shark fishermen. But even that's getting regulated where...
I mean, but you drive the beach on a weekend, every mile there's another shark camp. Like back, the early 2000s, you'd see one every 10 miles, there'd be another one maybe.
Well,
you know what I mean?
large sharks were not known for their
No, people going after.
Yeah, they didn't like shark. I mean,
Right.
they people would like cook a small shark, but it was just a trophy fish.
Right. Yeah, and that's really all it is now. I mean, they're doing the DNA and they're taking samples,
Yeah,
but really for the person.
It's a Facebook fish.
I would really like to see a little more going in for people that are coming into the sport of shark fishing. I think with the ability to place baits at extreme distance, with no experience, I'm a bit concerned about that. I would hope that the shark fishermen would somehow put a training system in place where someone coming into the sport can go and learn about how to handle a shark, how to take the DNA, how to tag them, how to release them alive, that sort of information. Because at the minute a kid can go and get a drone, he can drop a jackfish at 500 yards, he could sit there with an ugly stick with a 9-aught, and he's just going to kill that.
Yeah, he's just going to kill it.
Yeah, so I'd like to see a little bit more on the education side, but that's the way it is.
And then we have a lot of trouble with people fishing out of the Gulf using lines. A lot of people from other countries come in and, like for instance, snapper was on a decline. Now now they're just prolific out there in the Gulf, but sooner or later,
right.
The law enforcement.
So when you come back from Vietnam, you're actually a local Coast Guard. You become.
Yes.
Did you become a Coast Guard
Yes.
here? And you did that for a while, and then you went into the petrochemical
I was
industry.
in the petrochemical
as a
company.
chemist, right?
Yes, I worked for Lubrizol, and then I went to Exxon up there, and it's funny that since it was a back and forth distance, that fishing in the Galveston area was completely different from fishing from here, because up there it was lures and live bait, and here, coming down here, was dead bait.
Right.
And people didn't want to call it.
Now, I've always noticed, I always think, when I'm thinking of north of here, I think of bull sharks, more redfish, black drum. Here, I think we've got a greater variety of fish, it appears. For example, our pompano fishery is awesome compared to what they're getting up there.
Oh, yes.
So there is a variety difference.
Well, we have our Galveston area is very, very, very limited to a seashore.
Right.
And people that come from Houston to Galveston, it's so flooded with people that some places they don't even allow you to surf fish.
Right.
You have to go all the way to
Sabine Pass and stuff
Sabine
like that.
Pass to be out there to fish, and you're in a very small window.
One thing I want, were you
We're
around?
lucky we're here, because a while back I've always understood that, of course, the Padre Island system and everything, the island system, was one of the most beautiful seashores there was in the United States.
I still think it is.
Yes.
For my sort of living.
The freedom that we have.
Right, yeah.
There's not very many places.
No. I mean, people rave about Florida. To me, I don't want
You
that.
can go 30 miles.
Yeah.
From it,
I mean, you go 50 miles and
you're in the
40 miles from anyone.
Back then you were in the wilderness.
That's right.
Back in the 60s and 70s, because
now the last time I
had-
saw you out on the
nobody had
beach, you were
phones.
with, let me think who you were with. You had a couple of your mates, your cousin.
Yes.
I think, what's his name, who passed? the big fisherman.
Oh, Ira.
Ira, you were fishing with Ira.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
he was a very interesting.
Oh, he's a character, wasn't he?
He would what do you call it? He would always show me a picture of his tiger shark, and I don't know if it still holds the record.
Right.
Out of Porter Ranches.
That was a big one, wasn't it?
His family was big into fishing.
His mother was a good fisherman.
Yeah. Well, most women are. I hate to say that.
Don't you bring it up. I know exactly what he's going to talk about. Brenda kicking my ass.
Oh, yes.
Makes his day.
Constantly.
All right, one more thing I want to ask you about. Were you around when the freeze took place?
Yes.
The big freeze?
Yes.
And did you describe it for me?
It was, of course, everything was cut off. You couldn't, you got to imagine back then the island, what it is right now. It was very blanket and barren. However, a lot of fish there was a lot of over state record trout that was floating to the surface. People that
John Barley swears he saw a 40-inch trout.
Yeah, there was some big trophy trout.
Yeah.
Back then, and you got to imagine the trout. The years, from what I understand, the last trophy trout was quite a while back.
Right.
For the last trophy that was caught.
And you think a lot of the trophies were killed off in that freeze?
Yes. I don't know if genetics, it was so very unusual that there is a weak fish there on the Atlantic that reaches that size. And that it is huge. And I don't know if that genetic has ever appeared here. There's, large fish tend to breed large fish.
Gotcha. Well, John, thank you for doing the interview, mate.
It's
People
been a
love
pleasure.
listening to your stuff, the stories from you guys.
Well, thank you.
Thanks very much. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.